have you with us today. And we will start the summer school by inviting Professor Dimitris Karadimas, who is the Vice Rector of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. And he's also responsible for the CIVIS program. So he will greet us. Good morning, Dimitris.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It is really a great pleasure for me to be here today among you and have the chance to extend to you a warm welcome to Athens, to Greece, and of course to the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. Let me say, by the way, that it is the oldest university of our country, and not only, the oldest university in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Balkans. Each time CIVIS summer school starts, it's a very important event for everybody. And I will dare say that now that your summer school starts, it's an even more important event because I'm impressed by its subject and the richness of its content. This is what we expected of CIVIS. And everything started, as you know, with CIVIS about 3 years ago in October 2019 from scratch. It was a difficult course from then until now because we had this COVID pandemic, which brought a lot of problems in our efforts. But despite of that, did not manage to stop us. I would say did not even manage to delay us. And we are here today. I know that you will visit sacred places of ancient Greece and sacred places of today's Greece. And for me, really, it's a mystery how this you combine, you explore this interplay between music, sound, space. So I don't want to say more on this. I would like to close my short welcoming speech by thanking all of you for being here. Thank you, the students, for having chosen this important summer school. Of course, many thanks to my colleagues from all universities, from the University of Madrid, Tübingen, and Glasgow, who are here with us. And of course, many thanks to my colleagues from our Department of Musical Studies, and especially to my friend Anastasia, the chair of the department, who has also helped a lot in various ways in developing CIVIS the previous period. So thank you very much. I wish you every success and good luck in the days to come. Thank you.
Dear Dimitris, thank you very much. We know that this year we have several summer schools in Athens, and many of them combine also the cultural heritage, which is very important for our country. And this is the one that our CIVIS summer school combines the digital innovations with the cultural heritage of Europe. So I would like now to invite Professor Achilleas Chaldaiakis, Professor in Byzantine Musicology, and of course, Dean of the School of Philosophy, where the music department that organizes the CIVIS Summer School belongs. Achilleas.
Good morning to anyone. Dear Vice Rector, dear Head of the Department of Music Studies, dear colleagues, dear students, dear friends. It's my pleasure to have this opportunity to welcome you all in our country, Greece, and our institution, the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, as well as in our school, the School of Philosophy, and especially in our department, the Department of Music Studies, for this promising summer school organized throughout the CIVIS program and entitled Sacred Sounds, Sacred Spaces. I have to confess that I'm extremely glad because some of my thoughts and academic queries, which I had the opportunity to share with my dear friend and colleague Anastasia Georgaki, the head of the Department of Music Studies, are now becoming a reality. The concepts of sound studies and soundscape in their broad historical research period from antiquity to the present are going to be thoroughly examined during this summer school. Additionally, within their auditory perception and creative reconstruction, at the center of our interest are going to be sacred liturgical spaces and the music and sound practices they hosted in the Eastern Mediterranean, Central and North Europe. As a Byzantine music performer, I always had in mind a question of crucial importance. What does Byzantine music sound should be? Personally, I feel this sound like similar one to the voice of a soft breeze, as the sound of the soul of somebody who believes in God, somebody who loves God, somebody in general who loves people and life. In my mind, it's the sound of a full of love heart. It's the sound of love, the sound of heart, the sound of a sensitive soul, a clear, soft, and smooth sound which can deliver us in another emotional world full of nice and real feelings. Furthermore, I additionally feel that Byzantine music performers ought to care about any one of their listeners because they try to give the audience some special feelings, to give them the sensitive and real sound of Byzantine music. No one could achieve something like that without being in accordance to the space and specifically the sound of the space where any sacred music is performed. I sincerely hope that during this summer school we are going to have lots of opportunities to understand this musical aspect, an aspect of crucial importance for both the audience and the performers. I wish any success to our summer school. Thank you.
So, it's my turn to again welcome all of you here in Athens. And I'm very, very pleased that we made it happen. And first of all, I would like to say thank you very much to our friend Professor Stefan Morent, with whom we had the first contact. And he told us that he's very interested in the space and Gregorian chant. On the other hand, Achilleas, as the Dean of School of Philosophy and the Byzantine musicologist, he was very interested to reconstruct the imprint of churches and see in which way he can interact with his choir. So after we thought, yes, it's the same period, Gregorian chant and Byzantine liturgic chant, and we must put them together in any way in order to see how the sacred places have been constructed according to the liturgical chant. After that, I would like to thank my friend Luis Calero, who is a lecturer at the University of Autonoma of Madrid, and he speaks perfectly Greek, and he's a lecturer of ancient Greek philology, who was very enthusiastic with the idea. And after he has started to write to his friends all over the CIVIS universities. And we found the other partners like Ian and Monique Fells from the University of Glasgow, but also our very good friend that I knew before, Professor José Luis Carles, who is specialist in digital musicology and especially in soundscapes. And like that, I have invited my very good friend, Professor Stelios Psaroudakis, who is the only professor in Europe in archeomusicology, the only undergraduate. The only one, we must say that. And after, of course, I invited as our assistant professor, Drakopoulos, who is specialist in music technology and especially in augmented reality, acoustic augmented reality, and acoustics, room acoustics. So like that, we made the combination, slowly, slowly. I hope that I don't forget nobody. Tomorrow we have some invited. We had already some invited lecturers during the Zoom meetings. And here we are to see which are the roots of the European music history that connect the historical and systematic musicology to the performance and to the spaces. When we speak about space, which space? The ruins of ancient Greece. We have spaces, and we have these excellent ancient Greek theaters, around 200 all over Greece, that are unexploited and abandoned. Apart the great theater of Epidore, who has the best acoustics of open theaters and hasn't yet been studied because it's very difficult to study the open acoustics of a space. We have been specialized in room acoustics for the closed spaces, but not for open theaters. And so we said, why not to try to see what's the sound in sacred places. The theater of Epidore is a sacred place because all the old sanctuaries, Asclepion, was built, the theater was built inside the Asclepion. And like that, we are going to reinvent the lost relationship between religion and health, spirit and body health in these sacred places. And what's the most important? It's the vibration. And what's the vibration? The vibration has to do with the space, in which way the sound can heal. But in our case, we start from easy things because it's very difficult to go deep into these secret, hidden things that you're going to reinvent slowly, slowly through the sacred geometry of Pythagoras and the sacred geometry of the architecture of these spaces, that Vitruvius is speaking about that. But we go slowly, slowly to see what happens. What is very exceptional if you compare to the sacred places of Germany, of Madrid, is here that many sacred places are open. So we are going to study what? The soundscape. Are open, are in the nature. So what's very important? To listen to the nature. And listen to the insects, the cicadas that I'm going to present you, the birds, the wind, all the acoustic phenomena, and how these phenomena interact into an old theater, Greek theater, and the temple, and how they can create sounds. For example, last year we had a very interesting exposition at the Museum of Acropolis, the sound of Dodone. Dodone is a sanctuary, is an oracle. And there we can reinterpret the sound of the oak that creates oracles. So it's very important to see that we have started from the idea of room acoustics, but we go further to the idea of the soundscape and the interplay between room acoustics. So this CIVIS summer school, entitled Sacred Sound, Sacred Spaces, is a highly innovative educational module that explores the interplay between music, sound, and space in relation to the experience of sacredness in historical and synchronic perspectives. That combines historical and systematic musicology, archeomusicology, Byzantine musicology, medieval musicology, interpretation of ancient Greek music based on the Delphi inscriptions. We are going to visit Delphi, and we will see the inscriptions that will be after performed by Professor Stelios Psaroudakis and Professor Luis Calero and his students. And also, today that we will go to the Dionysus Theater, they will interpret fragments from tragedy and comedy that also has its own music, the prosodic combination, the prosodic interpretation. So we go through hidden codes of the music that have to do with music and speech. After we have another extension we said about musicology and performance, okay? But how do we perform in space? Every singer knows that when he gets into a church, he's not sure that he will sing very well because he doesn't know how is the resonance. So he must have in ear what's the reverberation of the space. So there we go to another domain, which is the acoustic measurements of the space imprint. And every space has its own imprint. And we will do that here in Athens to this very small church of Kapnikarea that we will go tomorrow. And through the help of Areti Andreopoulou and Tien, we will try, and our students, to measure the acoustic imprint of this church, and maybe in the future, we will apply it to the Byzantine choir of Achilleas in another space. This is the reason we have presented you through the Zoom meetings, the imprint of Hagia Sophia, which is, of course, a huge church. Here we go to a very small church tomorrow, Byzantine church. And there you're going to see the differences between many things that have to do with the Byzantine music and the Gregorian song. Very small church. What other we can do through this program? We can do, we are going to measure the soundscapes, because today we will go to the Dionysus Theater. Of course, it's a destroyed theater. It's not like Epidor. Epidor is a live theater. Every summer we go there and we have a wonderful experience to watch ancient Greek tragedies through new media. It's a wonderful experience. You must one day visit this theater, but the theater of Dionysus is destroyed. It's just the half. But we go there just to see how is this theater, where all the very famous Greek tragedies have taken place. Euripides, Sophocles, Aeschylus, Aristophanes. We go to this sacred place. So we are going to reconstruct the soundscape and the imaginary soundscape and make some measurements just to understand. So the aim of this summer school is, first of all, to understand what happens with ancient Greek music and Byzantine musicology, because there is a continuity, I must say that, but our professors try to find this continuity from the 3rd century AC. In what it concerns the codes, the system, the mathematics of the music, but also the mathematics of the spaces, the architectural mathematics. And after, to understand how we can, apart the science of measure the voice or the acoustics of a space, be creative and reconstruct the archeo soundscapes. So we have two things to measure: the archeo soundscapes and create them, and the acoustics of the church that we will do tomorrow. This is the reason that at the end of our today's session, we are going to create interdisciplinary teams between music technologists, musicologists, and linguists. I think there are people that here they are doing language, in order to prepare the material for Thursday and Friday, because as we told you, at the end of the summer school, you are going to present your own creative aspects on archeo soundscapes or on the recordings of the Byzantine Gregorian chant into the Church of Kapnikarea. So you're welcome at the University of Athens, and we hope that this experience will continue next year in another country, maybe Madrid, maybe Germany, we will see. Because like that, we are going to continue our research for the sacred spaces with different religions and different places. So, for example, in Spain, we had a discussion yesterday, how many religions? Hebrew, Muslim, Catholic, Orthodox, and different spaces. So next year, I think it's going to be very important to do that in a place like Spain. And the other year in Tübingen, because they have also the project with Aachen for the virtual reconstruction of the space acoustics for the Gregorian chant. And of course, with Glasgow in the future. So thank you very much for being here, and I hope that you're going to enjoy this summer school.
Μισό λεπτάκι. Εδώ. Λεζάντες. Έχει να πουλεί λεζάντες. Ποιον λέτε? Τελευταία γραμμή εδώ. Λέτε αυτό? Μισό. Αυτό εδώ. Το ανοίγω. Ωραία. Ναι, και μπροστά είναι, ό,τι θέλετε. Θα το αφήσω εγώ. Ωραία. Ωραία. Και παρουσίαση. Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3. Ωραία.
So we start the first session, Sound Archeomusicology and Archeoacoustics. And I would like to invite Professor Stelios Psaroudakis, Professor of Archeomusicology at the Music Department of our university. Τώρα είναι εντελώς σκοτάδι, ρε παιδιά. Κώστα. Who, the title of his lecture is The Theatre and Its Music. Ancient Greek Theatre and Its Music.
Δεν φεύγει, πώς θα φύγει. Good morning, everybody. On my behalf, I would like to welcome you too in Athens, both my colleagues from different universities of Athens and all the students here who have come to Athens for the CIVIS summer school. A warm welcome. Now, my topic today is the theatre and its music. And of course, I mean ancient Hellenic drama and its music. Drama is a literary genre seemingly invented by the Athenians of the late 6th century BC. In its early stages, it was an extended sung dialogue between a solo actor and singer and a chorus, a lyric narrative of a kind. The name of Thespis is associated with this early enactment of a story, an Athenian who, together with his performers, staged their plays on a wagon, something like this, moving from place to place, giving performances. As time passed, a special place was designated in the Agora of Athens for such dramatic performances. In essence, the first theatrical space was inaugurated. A collapse of the wooden seats during a performance, which killed a number of spectators, urged the Athenians to seek an alternative location for setting up their theatrical space. So, they chose the south slope of the Acropolis, the place where we will be going later today. It is there that all the plays of the 5th and 4th centuries were performed, including those of the celebrated tragedians Aeschylus, Sophocles, no, it's the wrong face. Aeschylus, yes. This is Euripides, rather. And Agathon of the late 4th century, 5th century, tragedians, and comedians like Aristophanes and Menandros.
Despite the structural modifications of Athenian theatre underwent during the classical period, one can discern the basic structural elements which were always present and which were needed for the unraveling of the plays. A circular orchestra, a rectangular stage placed at a tangent to the orchestra, with a back wall with at least one central door in it, and an auditorium for the spectators engulfing the orchestra from three sides opposite the stage. The masked actors entered the stage either through the door or from the sides, while the chorus actors, you can see them masked, the aulos player, and the chorus, while the chorus, accompanied by the aulos player, entered from the sides in files and stationed itself in the orchestra. The participants of the plays, who were always male actors, no more than three, sharing between them the roles. The chorus, always, well, to begin with 13 and later 15 men, all selected citizens of Athens. An aulit, an aulos player, who was present in the orchestra throughout the play and served as accompanist to the recitation or song of the actors and the chorus. He wore, as you can see, a long adorned robe, a wreath on his head most of the time, and a band around the mouth for sustaining the cheek muscles during their lengthy and copious exertion. Thus, every morning of a three-day theatrical competition of playwrights, actors, and choruses, during the festivities of the Great Dionysia, sometime in March, the Athenians would surge to the theatre to experience what they called a didaskalia, a teaching of three serious tragedies. Here we have representations of tragic plays like the Medea, the Alcestis, the Electra, the Iphigenia in Taurois and Antigone, and one frivolous satire play. Here we have a satire play, and another one with the aulos player in the middle, all four of the same playwright. At the end of the day, a comedy written by a comic writer would bring the theatrical experience of the day to a close on a lighter note, restoring the psyche of the spectators to a more positive level. And another comic depiction with the aulos, and another one with the birds. Although the individual macroforms of the plays differed between them somehow, as we can gather from the surviving plays, Aristotle will tell us in his Poetics that all plays had more or less the same kind of parts. Δεν μεγαλώνει αυτό, Πώς? Oh. Okay. Well, I didn't have the time to translate these slides from Greek to English, but I think you will be able to follow, and I will explain. Thus, for example, a tragedy, here is a tragedy according to Aristotle, tragedy usually begins with an introduction, a prologue, prologos, as you can see, followed by the parodos, which is the entry of the chorus. After that, there is an alteration of episodes and choral songs, what is called the stasima, until the exodus of the play, which is the final scene with the departure of the chorus from the orchestra. There might also be monodies. There is the word monody, monodii, sung by actors, accompanied by the aulos, or heavily emotional phrenodic lyric exchanges between actor and chorus, the so-called kommos, the red section. Throughout the play, whether tragic, satiric, or comic, speech is delivered in rhythm. There is no such thing as prose. Thus, a drama is essentially from beginning to end a musical play, as the prosodic features of classical Attic diction bring verbal utterance very close to song, as will become apparent by way of the following example. Here we have some lines from the Parodos, the entry of the chorus from the Agamemnon of Aeschylus. As the chorus enters the orchestra, the play was performed in 458 BC, the Athenians would have heard the chorus leader exclaim the words in recitation mode to the accompaniment of the aulos. And this, when you recite and there is a musical instrument accompanying you, then you are producing what the ancients called parakatalogie. The lexical rhythm is created by the sequence of long and short syllables. The bottom line, the little sigma represents a short syllable and the capital sigma represents a long syllable. So the lexical rhythm, as I said, is created by the sequence of long and short syllables, but not only by that, and by the sense of up and down, arsis and thesis. A syllable is short when it contains a short vowel. For example, megan, the first one. Megan, 1 unit of time for me, 1 unit of time for gun. So that's a short syllable. The word tropon in the second line, the first, tropon, okay? Or then the third in the second line, ekpatiois, t, 1 unit of time. The next, this one, I, gu, pi, o, on, ta, 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 tam. You have short and long syllables. While a syllable is long in 3 different instances. First, when it contains a long vowel. For example, the name Menelaos. You have a double A. Menelaos. Not Menelaos. Menelaos. Or the word are. There one. Are. The eta, which is a double E sound, so it's a long syllable. The word paidon, a double O, paidon, 4 units of time for that word, and so on. Or second, it contains a diphthong, like in the word again, paidon. The I is a diphthong, a, oi, u, they're all diphthongs. So when they occur in the syllable, they make the syllable long. By long, I mean twice the value of a short. And thirdly, there is an instance of 2 or more consecutive consonants, in which case the lengthening of the syllable is caused by the prolonged enunciation of the first consonant. For example, in the word here, klasdontes, klasdontes. That lengthening of the syllable klas is caused by the lengthening of the consonant zd. Or later here, ekpatiois. So ekpatiois, 2 units of time, and so on. So in addition, we need to introduce the lexical accents, the acute, the circumflex, and the grave. For example, megan, the word megan carries an acute, therefore the voice should rise and fall. Rise on me, fall on gan. Megan. Klasdontes. Are. Okay? And so on. And the aspirations as well before certain initial vowels and concurrently with some consonants. For example, Hypatoi, hypatoi, not upatoi, but hypatoi, like Helen, like Homer, okay? The aspirations. So, last consideration is the vocal intonation, the curve, the melodic curve of our voice. We are just about to read it. As we don't know the classical Attic intonation, we need to invent our own based on the idea that some close correspondence must have existed between intonation and semantic phrases. Thus, we can split up, and this is the split, the vertical red line. We can split up the text into semantic phrases and create an intonation curve that would suit the sentiments and the notions and ideas expressed in the words. We also need to take intermittent breaths. We need to breathe. Humans need to breathe. So it would be a good idea to inhale between phrases so that the flow of meaning is not impeded. And why have I decided to do that? Because, come on, if we translate the Greek, greatly from within craving for war, greatly, that's Menelaus and Agamemnon and the Greeks who go against the Trojans in Troy. They greatly from within craving for war, yes? Like vultures who, comma, breath, under grave concern for their young, breath. Above their nests round and round they wheel, breath. With their wings as oars rowing, breath. The caring of their chicks having lost. I have translated the text word by word so that you can see the correspondence between the Greek and the English. So this is the chopping up of the text into phrases that are semantically integrated, and that we need to know that in order to place our breaths before we begin reciting the text. So, as I said before, the anapists, and by anapist is an ancient rhythm, we have it too, ta-ta-tum, up, up, down, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2. The parados is always done in this rhythm, so that's the anapists. By the chorus leader are declaimed as the chorus enters the orchestra during the parados, with the aulos player accompanying the recitation. This is what the Athenians might have heard in 458 BC in the theatre of Dionysos at the beginning of Aeschylus' play, lines 49 to 53, and I will attempt to recite it. Meganektimou klasdon tesare, tropon aegypion, hoidek patioi salgestipaidon, hypatoi lecheon stropodinum dai, pterygon retmois ineres somenoi, demniotere ponon hortalicon nolesantes. I hope you can hear the anapist. Ta-ta-tum, ta-ta-tum. And of course, there should have been an aulos playing with me in Parakatalogie. Now, the aulos is a double pipe of a kind. It comprises two cylindrical tubes of unequal length, the pipe held in the left hand being the longer, excited by double reeds made of cane. Each pipe has either 5 or 6 finger holes, usually 6, for there is no mechanism of any kind applied to the pipes as yet. The holes are operated by the naked fingertips. The 6th hole, we believe, is needed for better quality sound. It is, of course, never operated upon because there is no sixth finger in the human hand. The thumb hole, unlike modern wind instruments, has the thumb hole positioned between the upper first, between the first and the second. So the thumb hole is here below and there below, the thumb hole for the thumb. So, in essence, the thumb holes are second from above, as opposed to today, which is usually the first hole of the pipe. A unique feature of the aulos is the positioning of the holes along the two pipes. The top hole of the right, short, here we are, this hole, short pipe, has no counterpart in the left pipe, while the lowest note, this one, in the left longer pipe, has no counterpart in the right pipe. As a consequence of this arrangement of the holes along the pipes, the instrument can produce two different notes at any one time. It is heterophonic. So much, therefore, about the alleged monophonic nature of ancient music. Now I need to connect for the sound of the aulos. Can I do that? Anastasia, πώς θα... Κώστα? He's improvising. He's not playing an ancient melody. This was Callum Armstrong from Scotland, a good friend of mine, who has been playing a reconstructed aulos that is in the Louvre Museum, the so-called the Louvre aulos. He's an excellent aulos player, and he's getting better and better every year. Thanks. You can see the place where the cane was inserted, but we've lost the cane. Here is a piper with the two pipes in 3 dimensions from Cyprus with a band mouth, the mouth band. This is the famous Pronomos from Thebes, warming his pipes before the satiric play. And now we come to the modes that they used in the drama. We have names of modes used in the music of drama. In the early stages, the Dorian, the Mixolydian, and the Slack-Lydian were employed, we are told. Sophocles later is supposed to have introduced into the dramatic genre the Lydian and the Phrygian, while Agathon, at the end of the 5th century BC, made use of the Hypodorian and the Hypophrygian. These last two modes, says pseudo-Aristotle, do not lend themselves to melodic composition, which is a style suitable for ordinary folk, represented by the chorus, but are appropriate only for energetic and decisive persons, such as are the heroes whom the actors impersonate. It is unfortunate that we know very little about the structure of the scales of these modes and the composition rules that govern their notes. A lot of discussion is made in our sources with regard to their character. One is supposed to be manly, the other pathetic, the other joyful, another one threnodic, but the form of the scales themselves largely escapes us. Furthermore, we do not know which of the three tetrachordal genera these modes employed. You may remember on our first lecture the different tunings of the tetrachord, the diatonic, the chromatic, and the enharmonic. And I'll just remind you that a diatonic tetrachord is the one that goes semitone, tone, tone, roughly. A chromatic is one that goes going upwards, semitone, semitone, trisemitone, and an enharmonic one, one that goes something smaller than the semitone, let's say a quarter tone, and a whole ditone. These are the three possible tunings of an ancient tetrachord. All we have are 6 modal scales. We have 6 modal scales given us by Aristides Quintilianus, possibly of the 3rd century AD, in his book, in his surviving book on music, which are supposed to be the ones that Platon discusses in his Republic. The first scales, which has the name Dorian, you see, has got a tone at the base, then 2 quarter tones, then a whole ditone, then a tone, then 2 quarter tones, then another ditone. Another one called the Phrygian, with the only difference being the top interval. Another one called the Mixolydian, with this huge tritone at the very top. Another one is the Iastian or Ionian in this form, with a trisemitone here in the middle, and Syntonolidisti, a tense Lydian scale, which is small in extent, but utilizes these enharmonic notes and a trisemitone. And lastly, the 6th one, the Lydian mode in this way. Okay, these are the only 6 scales that we've been given, but we doubt whether they are correct in any case. And the problem with these scales of these modes is that they all appear to make use of the enharmonic tetrachordal genus, or a mixture of enharmonic and diatonic, employing intervals smaller than the semitone, thirds or fourths of a tone, while the tetrachords are not identically tuned, as Aristoxenus seems to demand in his treatise Harmonic Elements. However, as we shall soon see in the first example of the surviving song from Euripides' Orestes, the scale of that piece, the Orestes piece, can be identified with that given us by Aristides as the Dorian or Phrygian. So at least we have one early Euripidean piece of music which can be described, its mode, the scale of its mode can approximate the scale given by Aristides, so we give him some credit for that. Now, before we proceed to examine this surviving melos, surviving song, let us look at the places where songs are positioned in the Orestes. In other words, a macro form of the Orestes play. Play, yes. Okay. All right. So the Orestes by Euripides, this is a macro form of the tragedy, begins with a prologue, as you can see, then extended. What is white is recited. What is color is sung in one way or the other. So the parodos, that's where the chorus is coming in, is entering, and you can sing this brown blob there. This is a little bit of papyrus that has given us some lines from this tragedy. Not much, just telling us there are no notes in it. And then the episode begins here, where Orestes wakes up because he has been chased by the Furies and he's exhausted, and then wakes up, and there is an episode. He talks with his sister Electra for a long time, and then the chorus, which has been listening to them, will start singing. And is the other brown blob here, which is the papyrus that we shall see, and that in it survive 7 lines of music from this particular tragedy. Then a next episode, or perhaps some scholars think a series of episodes involving the chorus, Menelaus, Orestes, who else, the Tiresias, and so on. And here we have the other Stasimon, the next song by the chorus, from which we have not a single note. Then another episode, and then comes the komos, this lyric exchange, pathetic lyric exchange, a real lament, which is usually between the chorus and an actor. Yet another episode here, and then an amoibaion, which means the lyric exchange between Electra and the chorus. Another episode, and a very interesting way here, Euripides, very innovative way in which Euripides introduces a song. He splits the song in 3 with intermittent speech recited. So he begins with a song, then there is speech, then there is a monody of the Phrygian slave, Phrygian slave, so it's music, then there is speech recited again, and then the Stasimon ends after this cascade of events with the antistrophe. So he splits up the strophe from the antistrophe by inserting a whole monody and a whole episode. It's an interesting macro innovation in inserting songs in tragedy. And finally is the Exodus, and the play ends with 12 anapestic Demeters. So this is the macroform, and we shall concentrate now on this relic of the papyrus, where we have 7 lines from the antistrophe of the first choral ode of Euripides' Orestes. It was written on a piece of papyrus, which is now in the library of the Austrian Academy of Sciences. The writing is dated to about 200 BC, that is about 200 years later than the performance of the tragedy in the Dionysiac theatre in 408 BC. Although the word text on either side of the papyrus has perished, you can see that we've lost, this is the line of text, the word text, we've lost the beginning and we've lost the end, and that is true for all 7 lines. And you can see that the notes are written above the syllables, so each syllable carries a note, a sign of a note. So this can be easily, the missing text, the word text, can be easily supplemented from the text of the manuscript tradition, because the word text of Orestes has survived through the manuscript tradition. But unfortunately, we cannot say the same for the missing notes, which have been irretrievably lost. However, attempts have been made by a number of scholars since the 1890s, when the piece was first published, to suggest supplements for the missing notes based on the scale and style of the extant portion of the initial melody. Here is a text and English translation of that antistrophe. And as we have every reason to believe that the melody of the strophe here, that part of the strophe, and the melody of the antistrophe there, the melody was repeated in the antistrophe. The restored melody can also be applied to the correspondent 7 lines of the strophe, giving us thus 14 lines of music. This is the latest edition, 2001, by Gert Perleman and Martin West, the transcription of the way they read the papyrus text, both the word text and the music text. And as you can see, above the word text stand the notes, and above them, some of them, horizontal dashes, like this one here, or dots, like this one here. Signs indicating duration of 2 units of time. The dash means 2 units of time. We have to count 1, 2. And the dot means upbeat, the sense of upbeat before we go down on the downbeat. A special feature of this score is the intertextual insertion of a dotted Z. You can see it here, there, and again down here. In between the words, in the middle of most lines, and this group of 3 signs, I call this an ear, a gamma, and a sigma, looking to the left, which is repeated in the 6th line, and again they are signs in between the words. They are not words. They have been interpreted in a variety of ways. Some disregard the dotted Z completely, believing that it is a mere separation sign between the dokmiaks of the text. A dokmiak is another type of ancient rhythm, anxious rhythm, and so we have one dokmiak to begin the line, and another dokmiak. So they think it's just a sign of separation, that this is the end of the first dokmiak and the beginning of the second. But what is the dot doing above the zeta? They don't seem to mind. So it's a mere separation. Others, that this is an aulos note concurrent with the next vocal note. They believe that this Z is an aulos note which is played together with this row of the vocal line, okay, concurrently. As regards the trio group down there, the majority identify the second 2 signs, the gamma and the sigma. They identify the second sign with aulos notes, again, intermittent aulos notes, and the first one, the little ear, with an apostrophe, which is comes from the grammarians, and it's a linguistic sign indicating a shift from vocal notes to interjected instrumental notes. In my opinion, the dotted zeta, Z, is an interjected vocal lamenting cry of high pitch, kind of thing, because this is a lament, uttered by the chorus repeatedly in almost every line, while the trio group, this one I believe, is a vocal utterance again, which in conjunction with the surrounding it notes creates a sense of a cascade of rising and breaking, one after the other, rising and breaking waves, sea waves, which, as the text says, here is Orestes chased by the Furies, and the text talks about a boat, which is Orestes, and the waves, which are the Furies. So the Furies chase Orestes, and the waves beat the boat and eventually destroy and sink it. like the Furies which pursue Orestes, fall upon the boat which represents Orestes, breaking it up and sinking it into the darkness of the abyss. In order to express this wave motion, I have made up a suitable choreography, which I hope to show you this afternoon in the Dionysiac Theatre. The surviving notes form the group. Oh, perhaps we should go. If we collect the signs, the musical signs from the papyrus, and we put them in order, and then we go back to this notation system, which, if you remember, we talked about. I showed it to you in the first lesson and discussed it. And we've tried to find which of these 15 scales in which they fit as a group, all these notes: the phi, the sigma, the rho, the pi, the iota, the zeta, the epsilon, and the delta. These are the notes that we find in the papyrus. So we find that the scale which is most appropriate, where they come from, is this one, which is the Lydian scale. You can see the phi, the sigma, the rho, the pi, the iota, the zeta, the epsilon, and the delta. So that's the scale we need. And what should we do? We can now know. I need to go to my Excel graph. I will avoid describing it into modern staff notation. How do you get rid of this? Can I get rid of this? Costa? Where is Costas? Costa? Μπορώ να φύγει αυτό από εδώ, από πάνω. Τα εργαλεία αυτά μπορούν να φύγουν. Τα εργαλεία αυτά, αυτή η γραμμή των εργαλείων μπορεί να φύγει. Στο δικό μου κομπιούτερ φεύγει αμέσως. Αυτό εδώ, για πήγαινε εκεί. Καλά, εντάξει. Όχι, άνοιξε. Ωραία. Ναι, ωραία. Φτάνει. Okay. So this is the scale. This is the Lydian tonos, the Lydian tonal level, which the composer selected, Euripides selected. And here are the notes. And we start writing what survives. So, Katolopyromai materos haimasas Hosanna balkewe. You see the double notes. Omegas olbosu monimos embrotois anadelai posos. What is missing is outside the squares. What is inside the square, the frames, is is extant. What is outside is missing as notes, but in order to sing it, we have to fill in the gaps with modern notes of our choice. So we can now sing it, and it goes with the new notes. Atolo pyromai, materos haimasa, osana bachiewe, omega solbosu, monimos embrotois, anadelai poson, Isakatutoas, dinaxas daimon, kateklysen, odeinon ponon, ospontum, labroi soletrioi, sinen cymasi. So here are the three final waves which will eventually sing the boat. Is the first wave, one, then the second one, and a third final blow to sink the boat. So I think this is what Euripides had in mind when he composed this song. Thank you. Yes, and I will dance it.
And it's going to be the first time that someone performs that.
Να το κλείσω.
Δεν το είχατε πει με την ιατρική. Στην επίδαυρο.
Ναι, εννοεί...
Okay.
Any questions? Mr. Psaroudakis?
Το κλείσα, γέλσα.
Cheers, hello. Just wondering what the difference between the slack Lydian and the Lydian mode would be. I've never heard of a slack Lydian before, so I'm interested.
Well, this area is not very clear to our minds because the ancient evidence is confusing. Was there really a tense Lydian and a slack Lydian? And why are they both Lydian? Yeah. And why call one a slack one? And what is slack? Is it slack in ethos, in character? Yeah? Or is it slack in level, in pitch level? In the first 50 years of this century, or the previous century, the scholars thought that it was a matter of level, of high level, low level. Now we tend to think that a slack Lydian is one that is perhaps low in pitch level, and it's also relaxed in the sense, in the character, in its emotional state. It creates in humans emotional state of slackness. The only actual forms of the scales that we possess, are the ones I showed you. There is no other evidence of a structure of a scale, of a mode, because as we know, we may have the scales, but we don't have the rules that govern the interplay of the notes. And well, that's the mode. A mode is not a scale. A mode is a scale plus all the rules that we have for combining the notes between them. The Indians today, in a particular raga, for example, and we have the major mode, but they use it in a different, they compose melodies that do not sound European, yeah? But the scale may be exactly the same. So we lack this information. And why do we lack it? Because Aristoxenos, in his elements, harmonic elements, he wrote a 7th chapter dedicated to melopoeia, which means composing, combining the notes of a scale. But we lost that. for some reason, the next generations didn't think that it's worth transmitting it to the future. So we've lost the entire most interesting part, the one that we wanted to have, yeah? Not the scales, but also the combination of the notes. So I don't really have an answer as good as you might have liked.
Thank you.
And you are from Scotland, are you?
Yes.
Yes. You know Callum Armstrong?
No, but I'll check him out.
Oh, he was here yesterday. He left yesterday. The double pipes, yes. By the way, that was in Oxford at the Ashmolean Museum during a conference on ancient music, and there was an evening concert of ancient instruments, kithara, lyres, and aulos.
Hello, I'm from Tübingen. So first of all, thank you for this fascinating talk. I have a question regarding the practice of the theater in ancient Greece, because we know that all players and all singers were lay people. So I've asked myself, how do we have to imagine the musical formation of these people? Were they trained just before the tragedy, or was there some level of musical education they could resort to, or how do we have to imagine that?
Well, the actors are professionals.
They are professionals?
Professionals,
Ah, okay.
highly skilled professionals. And the aulos player is also a professional.
But the choir not?
The choir not. And usually the aulos player is a Theban. They come from Theban. The Athenians don't like seeing their cheeks puffed up, and they invite Thebans to play the aulos. We have the myth that the goddess Athena, she found the auloi by the pond, and she began playing, and she was enthusiastic about them. But then she bent over the water, and she saw herself, the distorted face, and she said no. She threw them away and said, never again will I play these pipes. They make me ugly. And so I think it's then they were picked up by somebody else, and they became their instrument. So the Thebans were famous, the famous school. Pronomos, which I showed you, is a Theban of the second half of the 5th century, a famous, renowned Orlid, who actually not only was a good aulos player, but he placed the first rings on the pipes, and he introduced the first mechanism, the first aulos mechanism. Now, the chorus, they were laymen. They were men, all of them, they were men, yes, on the theater. But they were, I suppose, they were selected in the sense that they had a good voice, everybody had a good voice, and that they had training for about 6 months, because they had to perform 3 tragedies, a satire play.
So they were selected, and then they had to train for 6 months.
Yes, a maximum of 6 months. They had to close their shops, go to the house of the man who paid for the tragedy and or the comedy, and they would, in other words, they would be subsidized by the state, not by the state, but by the donor, yeah? The sponsor, yes. But they were laymen, yes. But I suppose they knew how to dance, they knew how to sing. And we mustn't forget that all boys had some music education at the age of 10, 11, 12, 13 when they went to school, and they learned their poetry and gymnastics and music, certainly the aulos and the lyre. So everybody, if you were an Athenian citizen, you had a musical education of some kind. And I suppose the best were selected every time from every demos.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a short question about your presentation of the song in the end, about the interpretation. When you sang that excerpt, you often joined the notes, but with bending and modulating them, and with glissandi and so on. right? Do we actually know that, or is that just interpretation?
By bending, you mean sliding
Yes.
up and down. This is my own personal way of singing in general.
Okay, I see.
Okay. Now, Aristoxenos says that you go from one note to the other directly.
Okay.
Do, re, mi, fa. But do we ever do that? I mean, today, do we ever do that? We perceive that we go from do to re, but we can go according to the melody. If the melody is lyrical, you're not going to jump abruptly from one note to the other. It is totally unmusical to our ears. But yes, I have a tendency to sort of slalom my way through the notes. But also, this is a lament. If you lament, and if you cry, and if you shout, and if you sigh, then you are expected to bend your voice through the notes or via the notes. I'm not actually bending anything. I go from step to step. It's a stepwise. But when you come to interpret, then of course, well, I don't know how the ancients interpreted these things, how they sang it. But
Okay.
this is as near as I can get.
Okay, thank you. Really fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. Mhm.
Stelios for his performance on Orestes Tassimon at the Theatre of Dionysus. It's going to be the first time. So now I would like to invite Luis Calero, who is a lecturer at the Department of Philology at the University Autónoma of Madrid, and he's also a singer, opera singer, and he will speak about all these problems that you asked before, the training of the actors on the singing voice. It's very important. And now I would like just to make a comment. Stelios had right, because when, as I'm doing also the acoustics of the singing voice, I would like to say that when you must interpret a lament, you must put your vocal mechanism in the position of cry. And there, of course, you cannot pay attention to the how you jump from one note to the other. It's for sure that there is a slap. It's continuity, because it's another vocal mechanism, like that. It's not the mechanism. So we don't know so many things about the vocal mechanism in ancient Greek music. Luis is trying to reveal us what happens, and maybe in the future, in collaboration with Stelios and other archaeomusicologists, we will find out some of the writings of Aristoxenos or other ancient Greek writers that they speak about the style.
Δεν λειτουργεί, δεν πειράζει.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, all of you, for being here. Without you, we couldn't be doing the summer school. Thank you very much for being here, I was saying, because without you, we couldn't be doing this summer school here in Athens, which is always great to be back in my second place. I was a student right here, long time ago, and now I feel thrilled to be well, a part of a group of teachers working for this summer school. Of course, I want to thank Anastasia Georgaki, my great friend, for inviting me to be here with you again, and Professor Psaroudakis and the University of Athens, and of course the CIVIS project. I'm going to analyze a bit of what we have to think of when we study singing ancient music from the text, and well, you were in my last lecture through the internet. And then we'll analyze some things. I was going to talk about the stasiemon, but I won't, of course. Why doesn't it work? Γιατί δεν λειτουργεί? Δεν καταλαβαίνω. Δεν καταλαβαίνω τι γίνεται εδώ. Γιατί δεν... Όχι. Γιατί δεν προχωράει. Δεν ξέρω τι γίνεται. Όχι. Να το. Με το κλικ. Ναι, εντάξει. Αλλά δεν φαίνεται εδώ. Δεν πειράζει. Καλά. Θα είμαι εδώ. Μπορώ να κάτσω εδώ. Μπορώ να είμαι εδώ. Δεν ξέρω τι γίνεται. Δεν φαίνεται εδώ. Sorry. Well, sorry about all this. I think we got him, otherwise I would be stuck in the first slide for my whole conference. Well, I was saying that I will speak about the three genders, the genera, geni, gene. I don't really know if I should pronounce Greek with the ancient way or the modern one. Nevertheless, as we all know, this is a tetrachord. You remember that we have these two notes, the extreme notes, which are always fourth, and fourth, all right? And the two middle ones that can be retuned so that we can get the three genera that you'll see in a minute. This is an heptachord. When we put two tetrachords together, like this is the top tetrachord, right? And the bottom one, we share a middle note. And that's the most important note of an heptachord, right? This is what we call in ancient Greek theory the conjunctive system, all right? They're together. This is a system that it's shared by many cultures in antiquity. For instance, we know that it was used in Mesopotamia, in which in red you can see the names of the middle note, Murub in Sumerian or Kablitu in Akkadian, and that stone you see on the screen is a tuning text that explains how to tune the lyra in 7 different ways. All right, it's in the British Museum. In Greece, it's called the mese, middle note, and it appears as well in Indian music, the madhyama, right? So some people say that this type of constructing music must be of Indo-European origins, right? So what happens when we have these two tetrachords and we split them up, leaving a tone in the middle? We've got an octave. What happens here is that Mi, fa, sol, la, right? La, si, do, re. Sorry, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, re. Sorry, I get confused with so many languages. All right, but this is semitone, tone, tone, semitone. Can I use this? Yes, I can. No, I can't. Well, semitone, tone, tone, right? What happens in the heptachord is that we have to do mi, fa, sol, la, for instance, and then semitone, la, B flat, C, D, E. So the system changes. This is the conjunctive, this is the disjunctive, right? So it's like two different ways of tuning the scales. This should be quite close to our scale, and this one has a problem with the semitone and the way it works. When they combine, we'll see some examples, we call it modulation, métabole, all right? And it happened in the peans that we will work on in Delphi, all right? I'll be back to it later on. So what happens, as Professor Psaroudakis said, what happens when we have this tetrachord and then we move the middle notes? We have the three genders. I usually prefer, and you'll see in the next slide why, I usually prefer to measure them in cents. I presume you all know what cents are about. A semitone is 100 cents. So the diatonic would be a semitone, tone, tone, 100, 200, 200. The chromatic, 100, 300, and the enharmonic. And now we've got a huge problem with the enharmonic, which is a quarter of a tone, around a quarter of a tone, and 2 tones, right? But I know there are many singers around here that will be singing in Kapnikarea in a couple of tomorrow. So I presume you all understand how difficult it is for voice to tune things underneath the semitone. It's very, very difficult to be precise. Therefore, I think, and this is my personal opinion, right? I've written a lot about it. I think that as there were professionals, of course, in theatre, but most of the singers were citizens, amateur singers. They could have a preparation, of course, but they were amateurs. And there were thousands, right? Because I'll explain it today at the theatre. They needed many singers for the many things that happened in the festival, right? I'll speak about that today at the theatre. So what I think, and Aristoxenos says that, is that the enharmonic was not used anymore in the classic period. It's somehow older than the singing of the classic period, right? Because there must have been many problems to tune perfectly well the enharmonic with voice. Something else is with a la, which you prepare the strings, and something else with a aulo. Because I'm not saying that these are like in flamenco, no, or that microtonalism that is used. I'm not talking about that singing, but tuned notes, right? Which is quite difficult because, as you may know, anything underneath 41 cents cannot be distinguished by human ear and therefore cannot be sung. Having said all this, you can see this genera on a pentagram, which is much easier, right? As I have said, the diatonic is well known from ancient times. And then we've got the chromatic and the enharmonic, which must have been Greek intellects, probably from foreign origins. And the enharmonic had disappeared on stage, as Aristoxenos says, in the 5th century, 4th century. All right? He writes his treatise at the beginning of the 4th century, and he says that it wasn't in use anymore. Right? So it's very extremely difficult. All you that sing can imagine how difficult it is to sing the last bar of those three. So, now let me show you. This is the tetrachords and what are called the chroi shades of the pygnon, which is the lowest part of the tetrachord. Pygnon means in Greek dense, compact, right? So when the lowest notes were very closed, Aristoxenus and Ptolemy speak about them, and in sense they become like this. We've got one enharmonion by Aristoxenus, 3 chromatic, and 2 diatonic. And let me show, those in red are the ones we've seen in the previous slides. I'll put, if I can. Where's the volume here? Well, that's all right. That sounds quite well to us, doesn't it? Right? Whereas the chromatico, which is 300, 100, 100. But can you imagine the middle ones? How to tune that with amateur singers? I find it impossible. And the enharmonic, it's extremely difficult. That was done with a computer, with sense. I cannot sing that, right? Or the difference between this one, this diatonic, and the other one, the malakon. It's more or less the same. All of this means that for me, it's a proof that in theatre, in classic period here in Athens, the enharmonic wasn't used anymore because of the difficulty it had, at least for the chorus members. And that is why one reason why I think that the chorus started to disappear, because music increased in difficulty for the soloists, right? That's something I have in mind. Nevertheless, to carry on with all this, we have to make a distinction about what we think the composing style is, which is the way in which we use a prosodic, metric, and melody and so on, and what performance style is. Professor Psaroudakis was talking about this. We don't know what the performances were like, but we can research what the composing was like from the texts and so on, right? And one of the ways of knowing it is by using the as accentuation, the accents, as Professor Psaroudakis said. So Martin Lewis West says in his wonderful book that an accented word gets a note at least as high as any other of the same word. And we'll see that in the peans of Delphi, right? Circumflex, which is this one, right, as you all know, usually develops on 2 notes, the first of which is higher. Oh, sorry, I'm missing an H there, sorry. Is higher than the second one, right? So it goes on a long note. And when an accent note circumflex is in the last syllable of a word and there is a grammatical pause after it, the melody does not drop until after the next accent. You'll have all this, never mind. So some researchers, even though we lack, we don't have the music, some researchers using this long and short, which is like crotchet and quavers, as you see over there, for certain rhythms. We know the rhythm because of the length of the syllables. And because of the accent used in each verse, we can imagine what the melody was like. But that's only an attempt, and for sure we are going to be mistaken. This is a very brave theory, but it's quite interesting, at least, to find that path to study music. Something else is what the notes were named. Usually, we have the hypate, right? Which is the highest string, which is the lowest note as well. Mi, fa, la, re. That's it. All right. So the lowest note was called the highest string for the performers because it was in the lyre, as you can see here, it was high up and close to the shoulder of the player, right? Then we've got the lichanos, what was the string pulled by the index, lichanos, finger of the player, the mese, the middle note that we know now, and the neate, which is the lowest string, but the highest note, right? And then some other notes appear in the tetrachords, and then we've got that heptatony, and when we split the mese with a paramese, which is a parallel mese, then we've got the octave, right? This is what they're called. I'll give you all this material, never mind. So I'll get to my point, which is talking about some musical fragments. As I said to you in my previous lecture, we've got 62 fragments in total until today. And the oldest one belongs to this Iphigenia in Aulis. The papyrus is dated on the 210, but the tragedy first opened on the 409, which means, as Professor Psaroudakis said, that we have 200 years in the middle. We don't know if all the music for these two papyri of tragedy and some others that we have write the music written by Euripides, or if it is music inspired on what Euripides wrote, or if it is absolutely new music for new times, for 200 years later, right? And then in that span, with the old notation system, we get to that Christian hymn that I'll presume I'll be singing tomorrow in Camp Nicaea as well. That's the first Christian hymn we have. And the last one we have, the last fragment we have with ancient notation before it becomes pneumatic, as we know in Gregorian chant or Byzantine chant. As you saw the other time, I want to insist very much on this. This is the oldest piece of papyrus from the Iphigenia. This is what the scroll looks like in the ancient writing, but I'll show it to you on staff. As you can see, there is very little we can see from that piece of papyrus. It's very difficult to reconstruct the piece of music. Nevertheless, it's the oldest one we have until now. We have the other one that has been Professor Psaroudakis was talking about. I won't insist. I was going to say many things as well about it. But we have the same problem again. The papyrus is dated on the 200. And, well, the Orestes first opened on the 408. Is this a music? Is it not? We don't know. It was discovered in 1890 on a mummy, all right? As we have heard, it's a middle male register, and it has vocal instrumental notation, as we've seen, and with that, the dogmatic rhythm. Professor Psaroudakis has spoken. You will have all this as well, so I won't insist on it. Here you can see the score again, and the score so that we can all understand. As you can see, all the signs in the score just presume that we are in the enharmonic system, which I don't believe that was used for this piece, because Aristocles says that it wasn't used anymore on stage, right? Nevertheless, the edition uses these signs, and that's good for them, but not 100% for me. Nevertheless, I won't say too many things. I was going to sing it as well, but I won't. Now, let's go to Delphi. As you know, when we go there, we will be visiting, of course, the archaeological sites. That if you haven't been there, it's magic. It's such a feeling that you have when you put your feet on that sacred place. It's amazing. I hope you'll enjoy it a lot, as I always do anytime I go there. And well, the two Delphic pans were found in the treasure of the Athenians. It was a temple built for the commemoration of the marathon battle. And you can see them here. We'll see that building. You can see it here. This is one of the pieces. There are several pieces, right? And we presume there are two of them. And some people say that one of them, the Athenian, of the Athenaeus, which is something difficult as well to know, has to be dated on the 138 BCE, of course. And the other one, the Limenius, which I will sing there, is of the 128 or 27, right? Some other people say that they both belong to the 227. That's something quite difficult, and there are reasons to think on one way or the other. I won't get to it anyway. They commemorate an Athenian Pythes, a delegation on those dates, all right? And the Peans narrate the arrival of Apollo in Delphi. As you may know, Delphi is a sacred place, maybe the most sacred place in ancient Greece. You know that Zeus freed two eagles from both sides of the world, and the place in which they crossed was where Delphi is. That's why it was called the Omphalos, the, what do you call it in English? Navel, the navel of the world, right? Apollo arrived there, and he cast away the ancient deities, and then it became the new sanctuary for him there. So what was in the score is that text and melody are in total correspondence, so that higher notes are in stressed syllables, whereas the unstressed have lower notes. So the melody of the accents, of the accentuation, and melody of the music correspond, which is something really interesting. And of course, the measurements. A long note is a long syllable, and a short note is a short syllable as well. So we can see that all this that Professor Psaroudakis was explaining before works for ancient Greek music. The Pean of Limenios has that heading. Limenios, son of Thoinos, an Athenian member of the Artists Guild, the Technitai Dionysu, which is a professional guild that started to work from the 3rd century BCE, of course, composed the Pean for the Pythes of the year 128, making a revelation of the text of the great choir of the Technitai that was to perform it. But the Pean of Athenaeus is quite damaged. So some people say that as Athenaeus means of Athens, some people say that it belongs to the same Athenian person, Limenius. Some others say that this other one was written by someone called Athenaeus, right? Some syllables don't have music notation, so we assume that we have to repeat the previous note, but we only assume, we don't really know, right? As I said, word accentuation follows the melody line, except for once, which is quite interesting. The rule follows the accentuation and the melody. There is no rhythmic notation. We have to deal on the text prosody. As you saw in the Orestes Stasimon, there are some signs for rhythm. Here we have no signs, so we have to think of long syllables for long notes and short syllables for short notes. And, well, it doesn't matter, it's got a pentatonic effect and so on. And as for the rhythm, there it is. It's a paeonic, which was used in energetic music. And in classic period, it was sia-ta-ta, or sia-shakaka, or quite scarcely, sia-ka-ka-ka, right? But in Hellenistic times, as peans are, we can find shaka-shaka or shaka-ka-shaka, right? 5 quavers, right? Or quavers, or crotchets. What do you call it in English? I don't remember. Quaver, right. Thank you. So this is the distribution of the rhythm that you will find in both peans. And they have the modulation as well, which is what I was explaining before. That means that, let's take, can I stand here? Πορνούμε εδώ. No, εντάξει. We've got E, F, G, A, that's a tetrachord, right? And then A, B, C, D, that's the other one, right? So we've got this model here, which is semitone, semitone, and then we go up to A, and semitone, semitone, it lacks the lichanos, and then we go up to D. But what happens, we have some of the melodies follow this structure, but if we apply the same system to the heptatonic, the conjunctive scale that we saw before, then we do this semitone, semitone, and then here, but we have the tone, right? We split both tetrachords here with the tone, which is A and B, and then we've got the rest of it. Do you understand what a modulation is then? And we can use this scale, or just through the middle note, the messe note, just modulate to the other system. And we can be both on both systems all the time. You will hear that when we sing the peans in Delphi. You'll listen to that modulation, because it's quite clear to our ears, because it's in chromatic. This is another song which is quite interesting, because all those students that will be in my team will be working on it, because it's quite easy for us to our ears. The Song of Sikilos was published in 1883, as you can see there. It's got a very funny history, because it was built in what is Turkey now, and some pieces chipped off on the bottom part. It was cut as well to make it stable, right? And it was used for plants and pots and so on in the ambassador house. His wife used it to put plants on top and so on. Nowadays it's in Copenhagen, and you can see there. And it shows it's in elegiac distic, which is only with no music, I mean. And then we've got a 4-line song and a signature at the end. You'll see it in a minute. We have a problem, that's why I brought this one here. We have a problem with the tetrachord system, because it does not fit that system anymore. We find that the melody as well respects the word accentuation, except for the beginning, that you will see that doesn't follow it, and you will sing it as well if you want with me. And well, we have some problems as well with the notations. Some people say that maybe the engraver was not a musician and did not know how to write it, how to leave it written. We know that this Stelios was related to a Carian family of musicians, and maybe he belonged to this Dionysius guild of musicians, and so on. It's written in Ionian harmony, in Iastic harmony, in 8 notes. You'll see them. I've got a transposed version that fits better to voice. Anyway, you can see this first tetrachord, and then the second tetrachord as well there in the disjunctive system, which presents a problem. As I say here, where is it? This tune is rejected by Aristoxenos because Aristoxenos says that the bottom interval, Mi F sharp or B C sharp, cannot be bigger, he says, than the second one, which is we've got a tone, a semitone. We've got a tone, a semitone, right? But Alypius, which is Aristoxenos, is 4th century BCE. Alypius is 2nd century EC, which is 600 years later, says it fits perfectly well. There's no problem in tuning it like that, right? Well, and the rest doesn't matter too much anyway. You can see it here. This is how it can be written, read, sorry. And that's the score. As you see, it's quite simple. It's very easy for us. We'll be working on it if you want. And I've made a translation just respecting the text, the Greek text. So sometimes it doesn't make sense in English perfectly well, but I tried to leave the words in the same order as they appear in Greek. And it sounds like this. It says up there, «Εικόνη λίθος ημί, τίθησι με σίκυλος ένθα». What's happened? Oh, he didn't like my singing. Μνήμης αθανάτου, σήμα πολυχρόνιον. Doesn't matter, I'll stop it. Yes, I know. Never mind. I'll just sing without music. So it says, at the beginning, εικόνη λίθος ημί, τίθησι με σίκυλος ένθα, μνήμης αθανάτου, σήμα πολυχρόνιον. And it says, «Ως όνζες φαίνου, μηδεν όλων συλληπού, προς ολίγον αισθητώζειν, το τέλος ο χρόνος απέτει». And then the author sings, Sikilos, Psalm of Euterpis, lives through the music, which is great for me. It's such a wonderful image of what music means for humans. He still lives because of this, because of me, because of you when you sing it. It's amazing. And just to end my talk today, I would like to speak about this Christian hymn, which, as I said before, is the oldest Christian song we have, and the newest, the last piece written with the old system before everything changes and the prosodic signs start to be used for writing the next Byzantine music. First of all, they use the accents, and then they use some of the things that I'm sure that will be explained to you in next lectures. It was first published in 1922, sorry. And it was found on the verso, which is the back part of a list of grain deliveries, in an apestic rhythm, which is one that was shown before, jakatum, jakatum, which was used for the parodos, the entrance, and the exodus, the exit of the choir. And what happens in this text is that melody and word accentuation scarcely coincide, which means that most probably the Greek linguistic system had already changed a lot. It doesn't follow the classic rules, but the language has evolved into something new, which has to be closer to what is Greek nowadays, in the case. And we can find some melismatic sections as well. You'll see it. It's written, in Hippolydian, nevertheless. And some researchers, Egon Velez, says that it is not Greek music. It belongs to some Jewish or Syriac tradition. It has nothing to do with Greek music, he says. But Martin Lewis West says that it can be put into a Hellenic tradition without no problem. I won't say who is right. I don't really care. The interesting thing is that we can work on the piece. And as it didn't work when, you've got here the score as well. And as it didn't work when I was talking to you on the internet, I would like you to listen to it in a recording I had to do for an exhibition in France. And it was a great pleasure for me to work on this piece and another one using Egyptian texts that had drawings on it. And this video was prepared with the original drawings of the 4th century Christian Egypt, right? Which is, a really weird thing. And I want you to listen to it. When I recorded it, I tried to be, you remember what I said to you in the previous lecture about vocal technique. I didn't want it to sound lyric. Amen. I didn't want to sing to sound like that. So I tried to use an open and high position for the voice, right? That's why sometimes it was quite difficult to sing, nevertheless. Well, and as I didn't speak about the Aristos Stasimon, I end up here. This is some of the bibliography you'll get, nevertheless. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Of course, any questions? Are there any questions? Yes, of course. Θα πας εσύ. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Θα πάω αυτό. Εντάξει. Εκεί πάνω. Make it easy.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wondered what was this ringing sound we heard in the last piece.
Oh, yes. When I first recorded it, they said to me, well, you should have some instruments as well, shouldn't it? And I said, all right. Okay, so I used just a little cling to make slow. It's got rests. The score has got rests, which is something amazing as well. So I usually played a ting in the rests. We don't usually have them in previous music. So I have to think, I don't know if you have an opinion about it, but I have to think about the use of rests in music in ancient times, because we usually focus on music and delivery, but I'm not sure I have been thinking about lack of music in the scores. We can see in iconography, sometimes we see, for instance, there is a great vase at the Louvre in which we see the death of Achilleas and the muses around, and one of them is holding a lyre, living like hanging from her hand. So it's usually said that the lack of music means death. And maybe that's why it's quite scarce to find rests in ancient pieces, right? So anytime I had this rest, I just put some cling in it, just because I was ordered to. I wasn't very happy, but what shall I do?
So this hymn was intended to be sung in a liturgical frame, or we don't know?
I presume so, yes.
Because if it was done this way, even if you have pauses in music, you don't have pauses in action normally.
We don't really know. It's just, I won't say a funny piece. It's quite odd to find this really old Christian hymn in the old notation system.